Welcome back to the Explorers channel. It's always good to have you around. You know, this is a channel where we explore, we do some retrospection, some looking back into yesteryear and yesterday, and do some introspection, see where we are at right now, and then some prospection, the future, where are we heading. I'm sure that there are that some of us may have some concerns, others may be just excited about the times that we are living in, whichever it may be. Well, there are always things that we can learn from. Life is stuffed with so many valuable lessons, and so this is the channel where we just explore a little bit. And if you've watched my previous video, I have promised that with this episode we will just talk a little bit about down memory lane and looking into my life, just doing a little bit of retrospection there. So I'm going to tell you in this episode a little bit about my family, the community where I come from, and what things were like in yesteryear. So thank you so much that you have subscribed to this channel. If you haven't done so, we would appreciate it. You know, it's always good to have you around. So please subscribe, like and share the videos, and make some comments if you desire to do so. It's always good to be in fellowship. And I just know that there's so much that life has to offer, and you have some valuable lessons that that in this community we all can benefit from. So thank you so much for supporting once again. Now, I'm going down memory lane in this video. Now, I was born into a family that was considered moderate. A moderate family was decent, and decent meant that you were well behaved, you were modest, conservative, meaning things like social ills, alcohol consumption in public arenas, profanity and bellicose display in the public, amongst others, were not part of your household description. Now, our household upheld a visible decorum of note, which lent us the respect of our community. We preserved this status for the first quarter of my life before things spiraled in an opposite direction. But that's a discussion for another time. So ethics in a conservative Christian family found description in regular church attendance, involvement and payment of monthly prescription fees, and these mandatory financial contributions which comprised of tithes, offerings, fundraisers and other impromptu contributions were at play in these moderate households. Understandably so, because there existed some incentives for this level of commitment. Oh yes, your household interaction and involvement in the church program guaranteed the baptism of your newborns. It guaranteed the officiating of your marriages. It guaranteed the burial of your loved ones, as well as the opportunity to be elected into the church board. But failure to follow the prescriptions stated above resulted in the relinquishment of these incentives, which meant that you had to pay up front, sometimes astronomical amounts, before these services could be rendered to you. Now, our Wayside Children Ministry, just having it in open air, in the open air meetings, those kind of children ministry group, ours went by the name Kinderkrans. The Kinderkrans was an organization led by the Caucasian Reverend's wife, and allow me to use, just put in there some racial terms, and it is not to celebrate racism, but just to point out that that's the times that we lived in. Remember, I was born in a small town in the Northern Cape, South Africa. The place is called Hartswater. It's about 120 kilometers away from Kimberley, which is the capital of the Northern Cape province in South Africa. And so going down memory lane with this story takes us right back into the apartheid years, the times when, I'm sure that most of us in the world is familiar with what happened in the apartheid years. That was before 1994 in South Africa. And so with this, telling this story, when I use terminology like Caucasian or colored or black or African, Indian, that's not, the intention there is not otherwise. It is rather just to show out that the era that we come from, since we're talking about yesteryear. So our Wayside Children Ministry group, the Kinderkrans, was run then by a Caucasian lady. She was the Reverend's wife. And she ran it in conjunction with our local church assembly, the Dutch Reformed Church, in Afrikaans known as the NG Kerk. Now, this awesome lady conducted classes once a week, every Thursday to be more precise. These classes comprised of Bible reading, storytelling, singing, prayer, and completion of the attendance register. The attendance register was considered crucial because it served as a barometer determining which children would receive Christmas gifts at the end of the year. Failure to attend these classes regularly forfeited your chance of getting presents at the close of the year. I cannot recall the lessons told, but vividly remember the gift presentation awards. My friends and I attended Kinderkrans for this reason only. The Sunday school was distinct to the Kinderkrans. Whilst the Kinderkrans was on a Thursday, the Sunday school was on Sunday morning at church. Now, at the Sunday school, a lady from our neighborhood was running the classes. She was a colored lady. I remember the lessons she taught. Maybe because she could identify with us. I also enjoyed the colored reverend's teachings. He preached every Sunday and visited our primary school as a guest speaker at the close of every school term. I appreciated these stories. He would always come with these beautiful parables. Now, these stories were normally motivational. However, the motivation was not for us to explore the world, of which, of course, we knew little about. Neither was the motivation to explore our own little worlds, the worlds of the self. Instead, the inspiration was to attend church regularly and to learn the Bible verses, memorize them and recite them. The more of the Bible you knew, the better off you would be in those days. And at least that was the embraced notion, the embraced norm. Now, at home, the church procured the services of my dad and also other conservative families. So, used the services of my dad to ensure that we pray every night. The Our Father prayer would be recited in poem fashion. As children, we did not know what the content of it signified, but that did not matter as long as we could recite it flawlessly. The achievers always received accolades of praises for being smart, intelligent, and beautiful. The less successful ones, on the other hand, received a tongue lash and sometimes a spanking for failing to recite this ancient prayer. I grew up in those years. My development was not in a holistic way. Let me rephrase it in this way. I made physical progress. I advanced intellectually but remained psychologically stagnant. Meaning that I could narrate speeches, recite poems, I was able to do calculations and had the acumen for study, but was found to be emotionally wanting. In some institutions of learning, I was even crowned chairman, protagonist, and representative of student bodies respectively. At church, I could quote quite a number of Bible verses, but an emphatic but. I lacked self-knowledge. Let me rephrase the preceding verses or paragraph or things that I said for the past 2-3 minutes by means of one syllable. I studied about other people. I studied about their inventions, but failed to cogitate about myself. This in itself harbored a huge risk. This is what I've come to learn. But then again, our generation had no choice. Under compulsion, we had to follow the guidelines prescribed by the curriculums designed to conform us into the apartheid regime's thinking pattern. In my view, this entire exercise was a travesty. It was. It really was. It was a travesty depriving people of personal study, the study of self-knowledge. And this personal study is, when you deprive people of that, that's very detrimental. Because self-knowledge makes provision for a plethora of creativity. Just a movement, a creativity that can catapult the custodian to stratospheric success. Something educators in my upbringing years did not cater for. By the way, they always reprimanded us to think. But seemingly the thinking they refer to was, think the way we want you to think. After all, we were not really permitted to explore the outside the box kind of thinking. I failed many times to get the senior citizen's logic. In this regard, I think I had an affinity for failure. Let me elaborate. We were expected to be silent after spanking. I did never get the logic of it. Just imagine you receive corporal punishment, your hands and buttocks in agony. They really fixed your wagon, if I may phrase it that way. So you were all in pain after the spanking or during the spanking. The anguish of effects or the anguish that you would show on your face, your entire being crying out, and yet amidst it all you are expected not to be moan or cry. That's what they did when they gave you spanking. Quiet! Shut up! Silent! That's what you'd hear the adults say if you dared to cry. I mean, just imagine. You're getting a spanking and you expected not to show emotion. I had seen in my growing up years, I had seen so many adults who cried when they were hurt, emotionally or otherwise, but we as children were expected to be silent and to ignore the discomfort, pretend as if the punishment never transpired in the first place. I understand the punishment part, but let me express my discomfort at least. Not to say that corporal punishment was the best way of educating children, because it wasn't. Also, the fact that any form of child expression was restricted could not diminish the flow of the idea. We could not express ourselves emotionally or verbally, at least not in the way we desired. I grew up in those years. Does it ring a bell with you? The church in the Bible was an integral part of our church and community. Small, and I come from a very small community. This does not imply that our community was unable to commit sin, which is a subject we can exhaust at a different time. Here, when I'm saying this, that that the church was an integral part of our small community. It's just to indicate the level of influence the church and the Holy Book enjoyed in our community. The seniors always had an answer to the questions we asked. At least that's the impression that I had. Although these answers at times failed to correspond with our childish interrogations. Because they were totally irrelevant to some challenges we faced as children. The answers I noticed mostly came in the form of a Bible verse. And let me give you an example. The spanking issues. Let's take that one as an example. One typical Bible verse answer was, God disciplines those whom He loves. Now an axiom that usually coincided with this verse was, spare the rod and you spoil the child. I know you're smiling right now because you also remember those Bible verses at the time of spanking. Now, who in this world does not desire to be spoiled? I mean, what is wrong with spoiling a child? Someone may argue that a spoiled child may lack to show appreciation at a later stage. My response to that would be, a self-knowledgeable spoiled child will contribute positively to society. One dad once said to his son, I discipline you because I love you. Son, I love you. That's why I discipline you. Upon this, the son anxiously responded, don't love me, Dad. Please don't love me. So most of these answers could not satisfy our children's curiosity, but for the sake of peace, we had to comply. We were not allowed to question the reason for the spanking either. If you dared to interrogate, then you were considered disrespectful. Like in Afrikaans, I now can clearly hear my dad or my mom asking, tell you my tande. That's an Afrikaans expression, of course, which it was used to indicate that your opinion was not needed. It was time to shut up. By the way, all of these were not imaginations. I'm not imagining things here. These experiences were real. I grew up in those years. This takes me now to something else, another experience I remember. Our parents used to buy us clothes, normally during when we approached Christmas. They would buy us clothes. Now the trousers with pockets was my never end. I mean, I could not grasp the flow of that idea because we were denied the privilege of utilizing these pockets. You have a pocket, pants. When you try to put your hands in your pocket, that was wrong. Now, so I was once caught posing with my hands in my pocket. I did not notice the teacher approaching from behind and with an intimidating voice he wanted to know why my hands were in my pockets. Kom eens jou hand in jou sak. Haal jou hand in jou sak uit. So he had a problem with me walking and standing like this with my hands in my pocket. So the teacher asked me, are you a rich man? No, sir, I answered. Remove your hands from your pockets. Well, later that day, I related the experience to my dad, and who, to my dismay, reacted in a similar fashion. So, Dad wanted to know, but why did you put your hands in your pockets? Dad, I responded, what is the logic in buying me a pants with pockets which I'm not allowed to use? You see that? I couldn't understand that. I grew up in those years. Remembering that day, the funny look on my dad's face said it all. I knew that look. The best thing to do at the display of that face was to rest your case. So I capitulated. After all, it was the era of children must be seen and not heard. So obviously, children's efforts to think outside of the box were denied attention. I grew up in those years. You remember? Well, the primary school I attended was founded by, and it was also dedicated to the community by the Dutch Reformed Church in collaboration with Reverend C.W. Kies, after whom the school was named. So the Dutch Reformed Church in our region was segregated into mainly three groups: the Colored Church, the African Church, and the Caucasian Church. I mention the school and church for reasons that find description in the teaching methods that were applied to influence our thinking in a particular way. The Dutch Reformed Church in many ways applied ideologies of the National Party government, which served as the pioneers of the apartheid era. At this school we were taught to imitate and not to create. Imitation is ancillary. Think about it. It doesn't encourage self-knowledge. And so the imitation, it's not always beneficial. It is a position devoid of originality, whilst when you're creativity affords production of life-changing inventions. There's a difference between the two. And so, at the school, the emphasis was not on creation, it was on imitation. Well, in case you were thinking that way, I concur that subjects which constitute writing, reading, and mathematics are crucial in laying a foundation of learning in children. We cannot dispute that fact. However, additional subjects which deal with the discovery of the self or the consciousness of the self, I think those subjects should be presented as well, especially on an elementary level. Excuse me. This kind of learning will inspire the young minds to create. My attempt here is not to dispense the baby with the bathwater, because we were recipients to some form of benevolence from home, from church and school. So I have no attempt to demystify or discard all we received from this institution. Instead, I seek to point out that children should be introduced to their idiosyncrasies as early as possible. Qualities like self-knowledge and self-consciousness are virtues that should be cultivated at primary level and kept as fresh as meat. This exercise will ensure that students excel in every area of their lives, including elementary, secondary, and tertiary levels of education. My implication in the light of what I've just said, in the past 10 minutes, spells that molding novice minds to the conformation of external modes without prioritizing their idiosyncrasies is to render their lives asymmetrical, unbalanced. Therefore, those involved on the elementary level, the primary level, should conjure up the gifts the talents and the strengths of learners as early as possible. I mean, learners who are self-knowledgeable are able to express themselves in a better way, as in contrast to those who lack self-confidence. The self-confident and ill-confident may be equated in terms of talents and strengths, but their output will be on different levels. The word, talking about primary school, and as I'm thinking about the past, the word school derives from, and I'm speaking under correction, either the Greek or the Latin word schole, and primarily denotes leisure, or that for which leisure was employed. In other words, learning should be fun. Therefore, the curriculums, modules, and the like should be drafted and presented in such a way to provide learning, exploration, discovery, mental growth, creation, freedom, and relaxation. Religion, in the same vein, is meant to offer revelation and enlightenment that liberates the spirit, body, and the mind, or the psyche, the soul of the human being. The self and spiritual realization, in addition to the school experience or leisure learning, equate to the stratospheric success formula. If school was leisure learning, I promise you, we would not have had dropouts. We would not have dropouts. But that's for today, for this episode. Me just taking you down memory lane, where we come from. And in retrospect, there's a lot of things that we learned, but more that we could have learned, that would have presented us better human beings today. And going down memory lane reminds me that if things were done differently, if education was presented in a better way, not in a lopsided way, we would not have been at the situation where we are right now, in business, in religion or church, in politics, in society, and in the home. Things would have been different. But, well, the best teacher, they say, one of our greatest teachers is experience, and we have experienced. And it's when we do a retrospection that we allow ourselves to gauge, see where we were, and compare it with where we are today, and hopefully gives us an impetus into looking ahead. Where can we be? Where can we change? Because the present is that gift that was given to us and is given to us, where we can gauge, we can measure, we can scrutinize, we can examine, we can create, and we can then better plan and see where we're heading. Because someone once remarked that every person is the architect of his own future, or her own future. And so we can design basically right now where we are heading. The wars that we see in life are wars that started in the mind of someone. And so how that particular person or people were brought up, and if they were brought up to imitate, we will then see as they go through life that they basically, their minds will be the breeding places for war to take place, because a war doesn't start out there. War starts within the mind. If the teaching is on a primary level to help the child to create and to discover themselves, to discover their own gifts, and the child is taken on that journey, the child will grow up to be an individual who will bring positive things to society. But that's enough said for today. Until the next time, I think with the next episode I would like to speak on religion, and I'm inviting you to join me there when we talk about religion, and just show you, as I continue to go down memory lane, what religion meant for me, and hopefully we'll look into what it means for me today. Until next time, thank you so much for watching. God bless you, and all the best.